Hi, and welcome to Long Live the Queen, where we talk about the women who made history. And by we, I mean the royal we, because it's just me. Today we're going to talk about Marguerite de Valois. Usually it's just me, but today I have my cousin Charli, a fan favorite. Hi, Charli.
Hi, I'm so excited to be back.
I'm happy to have you back, and this is a good one. Marguerite de Valois is very good. She's very interesting.
I did more research on this one than I did our previous together podcast or my as a guest. And meaning I actually read about 5 minutes on Wikipedia rather than scrolling while you were talking.
Well, this one there's way more information on Marguerite. So, but she had a life. And she lived longer than Lucrezia, so there's more time.
Right. But man, when you say life, it should be capital L-I-F-E.
Yeah. I'm surprised there's not more movies about her. Movies and TV shows.
Is there even one?
Not that I can think of. I mean, there's a lot of stuff written about her. But yeah, someone needs to get on it and make this a TV show or something, because there's a lot here.
I'm trying to think, like, if I could choose an actress to play her, like, I think I would choose, her name is escaping me. All I can think is her character name of Katniss. Like,
yes.
What is that? What is her name?
Jennifer Lawrence.
Like, all I can think is, yes.
Yeah.
Wouldn't she be so perfect?
The only one I can think of that's even close is, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Reign. But it's like a CW. It's about Mary, Queen of Scots. And she has a sister-in-law named Claude, which she did in real life. You'll learn about her in this episode. Claude, the character in Reign, is a lot like Margaret of Valois. Even though it's got her sister's name, the character is a lot like her. So that's all I can think of to compare it. But they gave her sister's name for some reason.
That's rude.
Probably because Margaret was so much younger. Claude was the appropriate age to play that character when Mary, Queen of Scots was around.
Okay, but I'm like, if you're going to mess around with history, like...
Yeah, because Claude wasn't around then either.
All of her qualities and, like, personality, just, like, mess with it even more.
Yeah, Claude got married super young, so Claude wouldn't have been around when Reign was taking place, really much at all. She would have been 9, 10 years old. And they had her being like 16, 17 and acting more like Margaret.
Rude.
I know. Well, they do that a lot, though, on The Tudors. I don't know if you ever watched The Tudors, but King Henry VIII has a sister named Margaret in The Tudors, and she's an amalgamation of his two sisters, Mary and Margaret. And she's closer to his sister Mary. But because his daughter was named Mary, they were like, that's too many Marys, so we'll name her Margaret. His sister Mary went and married the French king, who was way older, and he died right away. And on the way back, she married Charles Brandon, which is what happens in The Tudors to Margaret. But Margaret was the Queen of Scotland, so...
That's crazy.
Yeah, they do that a lot.
See, I can watch something like The Tudors and be like, this is so much fun, I just love all the drama, because I don't know enough.
Yeah.
It's
fun even if you don't know enough. You just have to know going in that it's probably not going to be... Reign is super inaccurate. Super. They didn't even try. It's like a fan fiction of Mary, Queen of Scots. So, yeah, that's all I can think of is Claude in Reign is similar to Marguerite, her real-life sister, her real personality.
Okay.
So, Princess Marguerite de Valois was born on the 14th of May, 1553. We've talked about her before. Steph's first episode was on Catherine de' Medici, who's Marguerite's mother. So Steph covered Marguerite's mother. And her father was King Henri II of France. And if you listen to that episode, you may remember that Marguerite's parents didn't have children for the first decade of their marriage. Her father was preoccupied with his mistress, Diane de Poitiers, who also has an episode. King Henri doesn't have an episode because there's tons of information about this king. But I think we get a fuller impression of him when we're covering, like, the relationship he had with his wife and his mistress and his daughter now. You get the full picture of him by the way he treated the women in his life, I think.
Yeah. That's, at first I was thinking when you told me they didn't have children for the first 10 years of their marriage, like it made me think of like, oh, they must have had some infertility issues or like something.
They sort of did. I mean, it wasn't just the mistress. There is official paperwork where they got examined by the medical doctors, the royal doctors. And it was determined that they, as a couple, were not sexually compatible. And as far as I can tell, that meant that his part was curved downward. Steph called it a gonzo nose.
A gonzo nose.
Mm-hmm. And they were prescribed, in the official royal medical paperwork, doggy style. They had to be taught how to do it doggy style, and they were like, this is how you will get a baby.
I cannot think of anything that would be more awkward than, number one, like, I've had more than one visit. I have 4 children, so, like, more than one visit to a gynecologist, and it's just horrible, like, just because. It's just, I hate it. To, like, go, okay, have to go through all that. Then times 10 it.
Yeah.
And go like, oh, by the by, you're not working together.
Yep.
So now we're gonna show you
and
how to do it right.
And it's in the official paperwork, so we all know for hundreds of years.
I know. And then now my brain is like going to like, did they have to practice it in front of them?
Yeah.
And so that they knew they were doing it right?
Well,
I was like,
there is a TV show, The Serpent Queen, and it's about Catherine de Medici. And in that show, they show them with fruit. They have like 2 oranges and a banana. And they like
I almost choked.
Show them how it works with the fruit. So I don't know exactly how it worked, but in that show, that's how they depicted it. They like put the banana in between the 2 oranges.
Oh my god.
Yeah. But also, the king was having trouble getting it up for his wife because he was so in love with his mistress, who was 20 years older than him. He's in his 20s. His mistress is in her 40s. His wife is the same age as him. And
maybe she just needed to, like, dye her hair gray.
He had mother issues, likely.
Oh, awkward.
Yeah, and they were together since he was, like, 13 or 14, so it wasn't a healthy relationship. Because she would have been in her 30s at that time.
Oh.
Yeah, and his mother had died, and he had been in prison because his dad is an a-hole. That's a whole story for another time. His dad was in prison, and he was like, how about you just trade me for my sons? And they were like, deal. And his dad got out of prison, and his 2 sons went in for multiple years in Spain when they were children. Yeah.
You know, it makes me think of, what is that, like, marsupial? Who, like, there's an animal who will,
that
like,
throws their babies at predators?
Yes! Like, if they're like, if their predators come in and they're, like, just reaching their pout and yeet, take my baby.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was like. He didn't even, like, when they met for the exchange, he didn't even hug them or anything. He just walked past them, they walked past him, and they just traded spots. Yeah, so he had some issues, and he was with this mistress, and he was way into her. And at one point, I cover all this in Catherine de Medici's episode, but at one point, Catherine has a hole drilled. There was a chamber that connected her rooms to her husband's rooms. She had a hole drilled so she could watch him with his mistress to find out, like, if she was doing something wrong. And she didn't pick up on anything because her eyes were so full of tears she couldn't really see much. And then it was decided that the king would be fluffed by his mistress until he was about to the point of ejaculation. And then he would run through this passageway to his wife's chamber to deposit the goods. And then he'd return to his room where his mistress was waiting. So Yeah.
makes my heart break for her.
Yeah.
Like,
And she was probably, I mean, when she
oh,
met him, she was maybe in love with him. It was like a puppy love, love at first sight kind of. He was her
mm-hmm.
age. He was a prince. She was an orphan since she was like a week old. So, yeah, her
Oh,
story is
now,
really sad. But you're going to feel less sorry for her when you hear how
oh,
she treated her daughter.
well, okay. Right now, I'm like, you're excused for
Yeah,
everything.
so 10 years, no babies. Until they were told doggy style, and then that whole hole in the wall, mistress fluffer, run down. It was a
I can't get
whole.
over fluffer.
Yeah,
Fluffer.
I think Steph used that word when I was doing Catherine's episode. I was like, so he'd get ready with his mistress, and Steph's like, oh, she was a fluffer. I'm like, yep.
Fluffer. When I think of fluffing, I think of fluffing a pillow. So,
Oh,
like,
that's
it's
funny.
just really
That's what they
funny,
call it
too.
in porn. The person who gets the person ready when they have to be all ready for porn, they call him a fluffer. And they're not in the movie. They're like
What?
behind the scenes. I know. What a terrible job.
That would be a terrible job.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
So,
Ugh.
yeah, so that was the but the mistress was fine with it. She was like, "Yeah, you definitely need heirs." And I'm in my 40s at this point, so I might probably not be having them, and we're not married, so they wouldn't be legitimate anyway.
Wow.
But once they got started, the royal couple was on a roll. They had Francois in 1544, Elizabeth in 45, Claude in 47, Louis in 49, Charles in 50, Edward in 51, and Marguerite in 53. So it was like every 18 months she was
Holy
having a
moly.
baby. Yeah. Once they got that doggy style down, baby every 18 months.
And maybe this is really terrible to say, but maybe it was more successful not because of the gonzo thing, but because, like, maybe, like, it was a psychological thing. Like, he
Yeah.
didn't actually have to look at her.
Yeah.
So maybe there was, like, a
And they were
fantasy
getting
element.
older. Like now they were in their 20s as opposed to when they got married, they were like 15 or 16. So they were grown-ups now. And at this point when they first got married, he had an older brother who was going to be the king. His older brother had died not long after they got married, so now her husband was going to be the king. And they were like, you have to have babies. It's important now.
Oh. You know, I have to say, like, I think it's really easy for us to, like, romanticize, like, royal families of the past or, like, royalty or noble, like, being in the
Princesses and
nobility. And
chivalry.
princesses, dukes,
It would have
you know,
been so
all that
rough.
kind of. But, like, it sounds like it really kind of was, like, the worst.
Yeah, no, she didn't get a pick, her husband. She was told, you're marrying the son of the King of France by her uncle, the Pope. He was like, I need an alliance with France, and you're my orphan niece, so you're going to go marry the king's son. And she was like, okay.
Wow. Because I was wondering if that Medici was the Medicis.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
That's what I was like. I'm like, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Catherine de' Medici was from a whole Italian family that was all kinds of drama.
Yeah.
And this is Marguerite's mother. So Marguerite was finally born in 53, and all her mother's children had survived except for little Louis. Louis was about 2 when his younger brother, Charles, was christened, and Louis was passed around the christening, and he got sick and died. So he had died before Marguerite was born, but the other children were all alive. There was 6 of them now. 7 had been born, 6 had survived. Which is just
That's
crazy. I
actually
can't
really
even.
good odds.
Yeah, really good odds. And I can't even imagine, like, having to decide if you're going to bring your baby to his brother's christening because he might die.
Yeah.
Like, that's not even something we have to think about now. Like, that's a freak accident if your baby dies at your other baby's christening.
Right. Right. I don't know. Well, sometimes I think, like, there's 2 really, like, extreme camps about, like, babies and baby health. Like, there's the people who have the signs like, don't touch my baby.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you
there's
cannot
those
come in our
people.
house for the first 6 months, at least.
Right. And then there's the other camp where it's like, give them all the germs. I
Yeah,
want their
they're just
immune
like face
system
to face.
flourish.
Yeah. I
And,
feel like
you
it'd be
know,
good if we were somewhere in
and
the middle. But
yeah, I kind of feel like I'm like, please, like, if you're sick, don't
yeah.
touch them.
Yeah.
You know, like, just like that would be just like any other human.
Yeah.
Like, don't sneeze on other
Yeah.
people.
Don't get
Like,
in their
it's not
face.
polite.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Like, but I was never like, but like,
But
man.
back then they didn't even have antibiotics, nothing. So that, I mean, it was just
Yeah.
at your own risk. And
Ugh.
the royal children, the ones that survived, weren't the healthiest crew. They were all kind of frail and sickly.
Oh.
Except for Marguerite. She seemed to be a healthy, bouncing baby girl.
I have a theory.
Yeah.
My guess is the XY gene.
Maybe.
I bet she was healthier because she had the two X's, whereas I bet the boys inherited, if there were any recessive
Their father
illnesses.
he had a weak constitution, so that's a good theory. Although her sisters also had medical issues. One of her sisters,
well,
but they
there you
were
go.
different. One of her sisters was born with a club foot. So that's a little different than being frail and sickly, but they had different issues.
Yeah.
So the royal couple had 7 children in 9 years, which is a crazy pace. And 6 of them had survived. So their surviving children were 6 kids in 9 years. And it's safe to say that as a baby and small child, Marguerite was not close with her parents. They were busy. She was their 6th surviving child. And they were already working on the next baby because they weren't done. They were like, they had to really prove that they could do this now because they went 10 years with no baby.
Wow. And I wonder if for Catherine, even though she wasn't close to her children, but I wonder if there was, like, because Marguerite came after the baby that had died, like, there had to have been some sort of, like, it would be so hard to, like, have that, to be happy for the new baby. While you're still grieving.
She was obsessed with her children to a probably unhealthy level. She was like, this is what God wants me to do, is have all these royal babies. So I'm going to just have them like crazy. And her father had put his mistress, who's still around, in charge of the upbringing of the royal children. She was in charge of the royal nursery. She had more sway than their own mother because she had 2 older daughters who were like the king's age. And so she had already raised children. So he was like, if I had a mother around, I'd probably put her in charge of the rearing of my royal children. But I don't. But I do have this mistress who was a lady in waiting for his mother. So, like, she would have seen him as she was at his birth. She was assisting the queen at the birth of him.
Okay, like, that just got weirder and weirder for me.
It's so
like,
weird.
At first, when you were like, yeah, like, he has this mistress.
Yeah.
So much older. I was like, okay, cougar, sure, I get it. That's
like, he's a king.
Vibe, whatever. He's a king, whatever. And then you're like, oh, he was like 13
Yeah,
when
he was
it started.
real young. Well, we don't know that it started for sure then. But when he was 13, he was in a joust and he wore her colors. So he was like, I'm here for Diane.
Okay, so that was kind of like, okay, that's a little weird. And then, now you're like, she actually witnessed his birth.
Yep. Yeah, she worked for his mother.
Watched him grow up.
She was the one they sent when he went to prison to exchange with his father. She was the one who, like, gave him a hug goodbye when he was sent into prison. She was the one sent to, like, chaperone them into prison.
That is crazy.
It is crazy.
And then for him to be like, so we were totally knocking boots, and who knows if we are right now. But I see you as such a maternal figure. Yeah. I want you now to raise my own children.
Yeah, no, he had mother issues for sure. For sure.
That's messed up.
But Marguerite was an abnormally... It is very messed up. So I feel bad for everyone involved. Except for maybe Diane de Poitiers. She drank liquid gold to stay young and it killed her. So I don't know. She has an episode too. So Marguerite
jeez.
was abnormally healthy. All her siblings have some sort of health issue, but Marguerite was not a sickly baby like the others had been. When she was almost 2, her parents were expecting, right on schedule. And in 1555, Hercule was born. And Hercule, if you see it written out, is the French version of Hercules. It's spelled just like Hercules. So her little baby brother's named Hercules. But in France, like her name is Margaret, but it's Marguerite in France. He's Hercule. And the very next year, when Marguerite was 3, her mother was expecting again. But this time was different. The queen was 37 years old at this point, and she was expecting twins. And they wouldn't have necessarily known that before she had the baby because they didn't have ultrasounds back then. But she would have been a little bigger, although this was her 8th pregnancy. So, her 9th pregnancy. This was her 9th pregnancy. So, babies 9 and 10 were on the way. And they might have suspected that there was 2 in there, but they wouldn't have been able to know for sure. The labor did not go smoothly. The queen was older, it was getting harder for her, and one of the twins, Jeanne, was stillborn. And the other twin, Victoire, had to have her leg broken in order to be born. They said if we don't break her leg, she can't be born. The queen and the baby will die. So that's your option. Break her leg or everybody dies. And so they broke the baby's leg and she was born. They did what they did. And Queen Catherine survived. But her only living twin died before she was 2 months old. So the broken leg probably didn't help with that.
No.
And the royal... Yeah, it's so sad. And the royal... and this was her whole goal in life was to have babies. And now she was like, oh, this isn't going as intended. The royal doctors told the queen she should not have any more babies. They said it's way too dangerous. You already have 7 children, 4 boys and 3 girls, which is an amazing record for a queen. And you shouldn't have more babies. It will probably kill you if you try again. And the king was like, okay, no problem. No more pregnancies, no more sex. And he just returned to his mistress, who at this point is now in her late 50s. She's nearly 60 at this point. And the king is in his late 30s. And pregnancy probably wasn't an issue for his mistress because she was nearly 60.
Wow.
So the
now, did he end up having children with his mistress?
No.
That she never got pregnant?
Never. But she was in her late 30s when they started, and he would be a young teenager. So it's possible that sex wasn't happening quite that until, like, in her 40s, maybe? So she was just older enough that, and they were probably sort of careful, and he had that gonzo nose, so I don't know.
Oh
she had 2 children with her first husband, who were about the king's age.
Wow.
One of them was older. That's why she was allowed to be at his birth, because only women who had had children before were allowed to help other women with their birth, because they weren't trying to scare people. Like, they weren't sending virgins in to help the queen have a baby.
I mean, that's probably smart.
Yeah.
I think anybody who has actually seen someone have a baby, they're going to have a long pause moment before.
Yeah. I saw my first, secondhand birth after I had 2 children, and it's a totally different experience. I'm like, oh, whoa, that looks painful. You don't really think about it necessarily when you're in the middle of it.
I saw my younger sister being born because she was born at home.
Mm-hmm.
And that was wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, it wasn't, I don't know, you would think of it as being watching someone be born. You see all the dramas and of screaming and all that kind of stuff. And it was not like that. It was really neat. It was a really neat experience. But I do remember saying, ew.
Yeah.
Gross.
I remember thinking, how does that head fit out there? Because that does not look comfortable.
Right? There's some serious math that you start doing in your head. When you see something like that, you're like, wait a minute. And I remember, I was young, and I was 10, when she was born.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I remember kind of like being like, wait a minute. Because I was the youngest up until that point. I remember asking my mother, going, well, how did she get in there?
Yeah.
Like, I know obviously how she got out.
Yeah.
I watched it, and it was like gross. And so it was like that.
She was
awkward
ingredients when
moment
she
where
went in.
What?
She was ingredients when she went in.
Yeah, that would have been a perfect response.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that was not what I got.
No.
I got the whole birds and bees talk, and I was not mentally prepared for it.
Yeah. I can only imagine. I was in my 20s the first time I saw a live birth, and I was like, oh, this is different from the other side.
This is different from the others.
You're busy when you're in labor, and you're not thinking about all the things that are happening.
Oh, for sure. Like, you're in your own little world.
Yeah.
Like,
You have to be, because it's just too much.
What, like, I don't know. I just like thinking about Catherine, and she must have had so much pressure, and like I'm wondering, supposing she had so much pressure from the Pope as her role. Like, I'm wondering if that's where she got that like super deep conviction.
Probably. I mean, her Pope uncle died just before she had any children. But there was a whole thing with her dowry wasn't paid in full, and the fact that she didn't have children meant she could have been sent home, and she really just survived at French court based on her charisma. She got King Francois, her father-in-law, really appreciated her, and she got him on her side.
Wow.
So the royal nursery was complete with 12-year-old Francois, the Dauphin and heir to the French throne, 11-year-old Princess Elizabeth, 9-year-old Princess Claude, 6-year-old Prince Charles, 5-year-old Prince Edward, 3-year-old Princess Marguerite, and 1-year-old Prince Hercule, because the babies had died. In addition to her siblings, she also had with her at the royal nursery 5 young girls who were all about the age of 13, just older than her oldest brother, and they were all 5 named Mary. The lead Mary was Mary, Queen of Scots. She was betrothed to Marguerite's oldest brother.
Wow.
And her 4 ladies, all named Mary, because the Scottish thought they would make it easy on the French and just send 5 girls named Mary over. And that would be less confusing. But it sounds more confusing to me. Just they were called the 4 Marys.
Can you go grab Mary?
Yeah.
Which one?
Yeah. In the Serpent Queen, they'll pass by the group and they'll be like, Mary, 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 Mary. Because they're 4 Marys and Mary, Queen of Scots. That's funny. It was supposed to be a joke because in the Bible there's 3 Marys. So there's a whole thing about the 3 Marys. And Mary, Queen of Scots had the 4 Marys. So it was like, I don't know. Jokes are different in French, I guess, because it doesn't seem funny to me. But they thought it was just a big gag. Like, the 4 Marys, get it?
Maybe the jokes are different.
Yeah.
Oh, you cracked me up.
It doesn't seem funny to me, but they were the 4 Marys, and it was just hilarious. And the Scots claimed they were trying to make it easier on the French. I think they were kind of calling them dumb, like the French are stupid. We'll just make them all named Mary. Haha, joke's on them.
Yeah, that's a little shade.
And those were all her friends. Like, she was Princess Mary. She was Queen Mary at 6 days old. So there was a lot of little girls her age named after her, which is probably why they were all named Mary. But
oh, wow. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. There was, all the other nobles named their babies Mary around the same time after the 6-day-old queen, which is crazy that she was queen at 6 days old. But that's why she was living in France, because it was not safe in Scotland for a baby queen. That's it, guys. That's the end of part 1. This one ended up being 5 parts, so the other 4 parts are over on Patreon. The link is in the show description. See you there.
Thanks for listening.